Hi everybody, welcome to Breeders' Cup Focus. I'm Dan Illman along with Matt Bernier. In this edition of Breeders' Cup Focus, we're going to take a look at the pre-entries for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Let's throw them up. They're ranked in order of Daily Racing Form National Handicapper Mike Watchmaker's pre-entry morning line. And as you see, we have a heavy favorite on Watchmaker's morning line. That is the brilliant Catalina Cruiser, a perfect 4 for 4 in his career, 9-5 on Watchmaker's line. City of Lights, your second choice at 5-1. This horse is a millionaire, has never been off the board in 9 lifetime starts, and he actually was good enough to beat Accelerated 9 furlongs at Oaklawn Park earlier this year. The state of this race was in flux when the pre-entries were drawn. It appears that 10-1 Promises Fulfilled, 12-1 Limousine Liberal, 12-1 Whitmore, 30-1 Warriors Club, it appears they're all going to run in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. That gets Trigger Warning and Dak Attack into this race. But let's start our analysis with Catalina Cruiser. His most recent start, the Pat O'Brien Stakes, he took down a prior Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile winner in Battle of Midway, and as we see by the replay, he did it easily.
Yeah, this is a very impressive horse for John Sadler, and Sadler has long said we haven't seen the best of him just yet, and I don't really have any reason to question that, because in 4 lifetime starts, he's never, ever been tested, and like you say, he just put the boots to a horse, and to be fair, Battle of Midway needed a race before we saw his best, and we still wait to see his best, but Catalina Cruiser, from a figure standpoint, he is the horse to beat. He has versatility. He's one from on the lead. He's one from just off of it. He can press the pace. To me, the question, there's 2 questions. It's this sort of John Sadler Breeders' Cup factor where, again, at the end of the day, his numbers are not good, and they're not great outside of Southern California. But more importantly, that part, I'm not terribly concerned about that. Sadler knows how to train a good horse. I'm more concerned about Catalina Cruiser. He's going to have to, I would imagine he's going to get into some sort of a fight in this race. And what happens the first time he's tested? Does he come back and does he battle back and go on and persevere? Or, we've seen it in the past, sometimes when horses take a challenge, they throw up, they say, no mas, I'm good. I don't know what you're going to get. I have a feeling he either wins by 5 or he could be in deep water.
It's a fair point to be sure. I'm a little concerned about him shipping outside of Southern California for the first time. Not because of Sadler. I know he's a fine trainer. I wonder if those numbers are a bit of an anomaly. But he's got to ship for the first time, and we'll see if he's ready to do it, go off of a 2.5-month layoff. As for City of Light, he brings 5 consecutive triple-digit Beyer speed figures into this race. But I have to admit, Matt, I was a little disappointed with his most recent effort. Loss is the odds-on favorite in the Grade 1 Forgo at Saratoga. We turn into the stretch, and he's the number 8 in this race. And yes, the rail was probably the place to be at the Spa on August the 25th, but this is not City of Light. Hanging on his left lead for the majority of this stretch run and just sort of finishing one-paced. Maybe, again, the bias beat him, but I didn't like the way he finished here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I thought the track was a little bit more even than that. I'm not totally convinced about the inside piece. I'm more concerned about the physical problem with this horse, because keep in mind, the plan all along was to run in the Whitney, not run in the Forgo, and he had some foot issues, and that eventually led them to call an audible and go onto that spot. Now, you couple the bad foot with him not changing leads until very, very late in deep stretch, which he had never done before. This horse was just sort of the, the definition of a professional. There's enough going from there to this point now that I don't particularly love. We haven't seen him since the end of August now. He can certainly win. His best race is more than capable of winning in this spot. I just don't know what kind of price you're looking at, and really what form is he going to be in coming into this.
Seeking the Soul is also pre-entered in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He is on the also eligible list currently for the Classic. That would be Dallas Stewart's first choice. We know he loves Churchill Downs by virtue of his Grade 1 win in the Clark last fall. Let's go back to his coming out party, the race preceding the Clark at Keeneland last fall, where for the first time in his career, he just looked like a graded stakes horse. He won by 9. He got a triple-digit Beyer speed figure. You loved this performance. You were on him in the Clark at 7-1, and he really wasn't embarrassed in the Pegasus, all things considered, finishing 5th behind Gunrunner and West Coast.
I thought he ran really well in the Pegasus, and then obviously he was gone for quite some time, came back in that race at Indiana Grand. I'm not going to hold that against him again off such a long layoff. The Woodward was, I don't know what to make of that. That was disappointing to me, and I recognize that there was some pace signed on, but he completely fell apart at the seams. Then he comes back and he wins, and he's pretty impressive winning the ACAC, considering 1-turn mile, considering the lack of pace in that race. Timeform US had all those fractions color-coded blue. Thought that was a pretty big effort. And then when you look at the fig that Timeform US awarded him for that race, a 124 raw, not including the pace situation, boy, he's really interesting. Really, to be honest, in either race that he goes in. If he goes here, I think he's certainly intriguing. And if he goes in the Classic, I don't think he's totally without a chance, at the very least, to hit the board at a big, big number.
Firenze Fire is a one-turn specialist. He has been that way since day one. Grade 1 winner of the Champagne is a 2-year-old at 11-1, a big price. This year, they got a little bit ambitious. They had some Kentucky Derby fever. He ran in the Derby. They've cut him back since then, and just look what he's done. He whipped Mendelssohn by a large margin in the Dwyer. I thought he ran fine in the Allen Jerkins. And then last time out in the Gallant Bob Stakes, he had to fight going 6 furlongs. I think 6 is a little short for this horse, but he fought. He got through it, despite almost getting his neck bit off in mid-stretch. I think this is a very dangerous horse on his best day.
Yeah, so the interesting thing for me taking a look at this horse, I think the mile is the right call to run here as opposed to the sprint, because I agree, the sprint I think is going to be a little bit sharp for him. I guess I'm just curious going forward, is he the Dwyer horse, or is he the Allen Jerkins Gallant Bob horse? Or do you think that there's going to be an improvement here? Because I don't believe that either of the past 2 efforts is good enough to win in a race like this. If he runs the Dwyer, he can certainly win this race. And I guess that's the thing that I'm just trying to figure out at this point, assessing him, looking at, going through, watching all the replays. He ran well in each of these past 2. I'm not denying that. But from a figure standpoint, it's just a little bit on the light side. The Dwyer, if you told me that's what we were going to get, then all of a sudden he is very interesting and a very, very likely win contender at that point.
Is Giant Expectations primed and ready to go second start off of a long layoff? When he won the Pat O'Brien last year, I really was interested in seeing him in the Breeders' Cup. His final prep before the Breeders' Cup was an unmitigated disaster. He did no running in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship, and it was almost like, well, he just is off form, and his Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile was terrible. He won the San Antonio, but let's be honest, that race was just simply gifted to him. When collected, never showed any speed. He was then thrown into some tough spots. Your thoughts on the ACAC slow pace? He didn't break. He mid-moved. I thought it was a useful prep.
Yeah, I was going to say, he should move forward out of that. I don't think there's any real question about it. I guess the concern for me is that San Antonio, that's sort of his hallmark. I guess understandably the Pat O'Brien as well. But the San Antonio, you made mention, everything went his way that day. I don't really think that's a true indication of the talent level here. And then the Pat O'Brien, he earned that 101, but to be fair, I don't think a 101 is going to be good enough to win the Dirt Mile here next Saturday. I think he's going to need to run the best race of his life. I think he's going to need something pretty darn close to that San Antonio. And to be honest, I just don't think that we're looking at a 10-point improvement from start 1 to start 2 off the layoff. I think you may be seeing a triple-digit buyer, but I don't know that that's going to be enough to win.
This will be the 7th consecutive Grade 1 that Bravazzo will compete in. He has been against the cream of the 3-year-old crop. This will be his first start against older horses. Some might argue no Justifies, no McKinseys, no Catholic Boys. He's going to fit very well in a race like this at a distance that he should really appreciate. Is he fast enough to win?
No, right now he's not on paper, and through 14 lifetime starts, I suppose you can make the case that he's just not going to improve. I realize he's 2 for 3 at this distance, and he's never been out of the money. I personally like him better at longer distances. I think he's more of a grinder as opposed to a kind of horse that can come and really turn it on. I have to be honest, he's certainly not facing the best 3-year-olds in this race, maybe with the exception of Firenze Fire, but he's still facing the best field he's ever faced in his life. I think he's up against it.
I know you've been waiting for trigger warning to cut back in distance. Is this the right spot, though?
You know what? He may not be a likely win contender, but I'm not totally convinced that I can't talk myself into a scenario where he at least threatens for the win. He's not fast enough on paper right now, but I can make the case for the past 4 starts that he's been going distances that are too far. He ran a winning race in the Ohio Derby, and I think the distance got to him. Ran a winning race in the Indiana Derby. I think the distance got to him. Draw a line through the Travers, and he ran just fine in the Pennsylvania Derby. This is a horse on the turnback. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he outran his odds again, which he's basically been doing all summer.
Catalina Cruiser puts his undefeated streak on the line in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile when he starts as a likely favorite over several solid horses, including the ultra-consistent Grade 1 winner, City of Light.